In the United States, certain state legislators have started the process of legalizing cannabis for recreational use rather than solely for medicinal use. And marijuana is still illegal under federal law, but has become completely legal in 10 states, and those states are Alaska, California, Colorado, Maine, Massachusetts, Michigan, Nevada, Oregon, Vermont, and Washington. So it's legal medically in 33 states, but decriminalized in many. And I believe that it should be decriminalized in all states because no one should be going to jail for 30 years or for life just for selling marijuana or consuming it. So I do think it's wrong to legalize marijuana for recreational use rather than medicinal use because it can have a huge impact on American adolescents and has been found to have potential long-term psychological and physiological health impacts, and because of marijuana's risk of being a stepping stone to other drugs. So marijuana is addictive. So marijuana can lead to marijuana use disorder, a dependency or addiction to marijuana that comes with its own set of withdrawal symptoms, such as depression, anxiety, paranoia, restlessness, disturbed sleep, and decreased appetite. So there has been some misconceptions about marijuana in recent years. Many have stopped calling it a drug. Many have said it's not addictive, when in fact it is addictive and it is a drug. So 30% of those who use marijuana, either recreationally or medicinally, may have some degree of marijuana use disorder. So there has been, it does fit the criteria as it is a medicine or other substance that does have physiological and psychological effect when ingested and has a risk of addiction or dependency. As marijuana is a drug, it shouldn't be legalized recreationally, only for medicinal purposes. So adolescents are particularly at risk. As with all substances of abuse, alcohol, cigarettes, opioids, heroin, etc., that adults can readily use or have available either to purchase or obtain illegally, adolescents can also obtain and start consuming them. The same thing happened with electronic cigarettes. They were made for adults to stop cessation of smoking, but actually adolescents started using them and they became very popular with children aged 12 to 17 instead of as a cessation for adults only. So substance abuse is a pattern of recurrent usage of alcohol or drugs that disrupts the activities of daily life. Individuals are more likely to begin abusing drugs or substances of abuse such as tobacco, alcohol, marijuana, and other illegal drugs during adolescence. Whether it is due to a culture of partying in high school, as an adolescent's desire for new experiences, or a way to self-medicate depression or anxiety, adolescents are consistently consuming substances of abuse. One of the most commonly abused substances is marijuana, according to the National Survey of Drug Use and Health. National trends indicate that marijuana usage has risen significantly since 2008. So this is the number of emergency department visits on an average day, and you can see that marijuana is the highest, followed closely by alcohol, and then prescription or non-prescription pain relievers. So the media and marijuana. The rise of marijuana use in adolescents could be related to public opinion changing about marijuana. In recent years, there has been a significant amount of media attention on marijuana and how it is not as dangerous as it once was believed in the 1980s and 1990s. Recently, more and more celebrities have been endorsing marijuana and its legalization on platforms popular with adolescents such as social media. Celebrity endorsements of marijuana could significantly impact how adolescents view the drug. With the rise of social media, more and more adolescents are being exposed to the popular and desired effects of marijuana. So what makes an adolescent more at risk is that their brains are make them more susceptible. Because of an adolescent's developing brain, they're much more likely to engage in risk-taking behavior, and they have a desire to partake in new experiences. And they're more likely to succumb to coercion. Peer pressure, social media influences. Because an adolescent's brain is still developing, it's also the worst time to abuse substances. They are incredibly vulnerable to substance abuse disorders, psychological disorders, and cognitive impairments later in life. A study conducted by the American Journal of Psychiatry in 2017 found that adolescent brains are more susceptible to negative effects of marijuana than even alcohol. Negative effects such as impairments of cognitive abilities, memory, understanding, learning, and increased risk for anxiety and depression were found. Research constantly shows that marijuana use, specifically during adolescence, produces negative effects that present themselves later in life. Nevertheless, public opinion about marijuana is mostly positive. If there was a complete legalization of marijuana in all states, it would be much easier for adolescents to obtain it, as the legalization age is 21. So here you can see how these are the areas that are more susceptible to change, and this is the age. So the older you get, the less your brain can be susceptible to change, and how this is like the regions that are less developed, and over here they're mostly all developed by age 20. So the permanent changes that could happen are slower processing, poorer memory, less control of emotions, and lower verbal comprehension and worse problem solving. So this is the trends of what national trends indicate how much recreational and how much medicinal marijuana will be purchased in increasing years, and how it's increased over the years. So there's also effects of marijuana use on adults. So adults using marijuana, it doesn't damage their brain as much as adolescents, because past the age of 25, your brain has stopped developing, but there are still significant risks such as addiction and impaired memory. According to a study conducted by the University of Texas in 2017, testing non-medical versus medical use in adults, it was concluded that because of the high rates of marijuana use disorder among medical users, physicians should be wary of prescribing marijuana to their patients, especially if those patients are young adults. Adults are still vulnerable to marijuana use disorder. A study published in the Psychopharmacology Institute in 2004 tested the effects of marijuana on working and episodic memory in adults that had not been marijuana users as adolescents. Because the active ingredient marijuana, THC, triggers cannabinoid receptors found mostly in the frontal cortex and hippocampus, frequent marijuana usage can impede working memory and episodic memory. Adults are at less of a cognitive risk than adolescents, but there are still negative side effects. So, marijuana and driving. As marijuana considerably weakens an individual's reaction time, sharpness, judgment, and motor coordination, it stands to reason that it would also impair an individual's driving ability. Marijuana is the illicit drug most frequently found in the blood of drivers who have been involved in vehicle crashes, including fatal ones. 2 large European studies found that drivers with THC in their blood were roughly twice as likely to be culpable for a car crash than drivers who had not used drugs or alcohol. Those involved in vehicle crashes with THC in their blood, particularly higher levels, are 3 to 7 times more likely to be responsible for the incident than drivers who had not used drugs or alcohol. The risk associated with marijuana in combination with alcohol appears to be greater than that by the drug by itself. So marijuana and pregnancy. With increased availability of marijuana, there would be more marijuana users. Just like with the driving, the more availability there is, the more risk of consumption. Some of these individuals would potentially use marijuana during their pregnancy. A study testing the prevalence of marijuana use in pregnant women found that marijuana was also correlated with tobacco use, alcohol use, and depression. According to the CDC, using marijuana during pregnancy can contribute to low birth weight, developmental problems later in life, and chemical effects from the smoke inhalation. No obstetrician would prescribe a pregnant woman marijuana, but if marijuana were legal recreationally, there would be no difficulty into going to a store and buying it. Availability increases consumption. An individual might find it too inconvenient to seek out a drug dealer for marijuana, but would readily drive to a store and buy it. So, is marijuana a gateway drug? A gateway drug is defined as a habit-forming drug that, while itself not addicted, may lead to the use of other addictive drugs. So because of marijuana's powerful psychoactive properties such as relaxation, euphoria, increased sensation, because of these enjoyable sensations, marijuana stimulates an individual's reward center in their brain. The more marijuana an individual intakes, the more tolerant they become to it. Some individuals become so tolerant that no amount of marijuana is enough to achieve the same high. This could lead to pursuing other stronger drugs in pursuit of that same high, that same euphoria that they once felt. So this would be a gateway. A user starts off with marijuana, it's a relatively safe drug, and then progresses to cocaine or ecstasy or opioids to achieve a stronger high. So these are the 3 most common gateway drugs: alcohol, marijuana, and prescription medicine. So it's a drug that can be habit forming, but isn't always. It's using them can lead to other harder drugs, and the secondary drugs are generally more addictive. So let's say alcohol, marijuana, and prescription medication obviously aren't as addictive as heroin or codeine, but they start off with these. Marijuana is probably the least addictive out of these three, but with more availability increases consumption, and that could lead to other things. So I believe that legalizing recreational marijuana would be unethical. I do believe that it would have a huge impact on American adolescents. It has been found to have potential long-term physiological and psychological health impacts, and I believe it could be a stepping stone to other drugs. Thank you.